Hi, I'm Drenda, and this is Drenda on Guard, where we declare a war on sadness every day, weekly. And I'm glad you joined us here. We talk about topics and things that affect your family, your relationships, business, money, and policies and politics as it affects your life and your family. Things you and I need to talk about. I'm so glad you joined me today. And also joining us is Rabbi Jonathan Cahn. And Rabbi, we are so glad you're here. He is an incredible prophetic voice, and this is a time that we've never seen, right?
Unbelievable. The last time we were together, when I was here with you, it was just before everything was going to hit.
Yes.
And we spoke about things. We had a sense, of that. So yeah, we have been through the most dramatic time in our lives, and really prophetic times.
You were saying there was something stirring in you. You felt like it was going to be a year of warfare.
Yeah, I had a real strong sense, and one of the things is that just before I came here, I always pray for what's the next book, and I had things in my head. It could be this, Lord, which do you want? And it was none of them. It was now. This is going to be a year. 2020 is going to be a year of shaking, great shaking, beginning, and it's going to be the continuation of this template on the harbinger, which is really warnings and shakings from the Lord. And so I had to write, the next book had to be finally the book I held off for like 8 years because I couldn't just write it, was the sequel to The Harbinger, which is The Harbinger 2. But I know it's not a book I can just say, okay, let me just write this book. Right. It's got to be the time, so I knew I had to do it. So I started after we were together, you, me, and Gary, and we were talking of the future more than we ever have. And then right after when I got home, I started writing The Harbinger 2. And then 2 months later, it all came and it all began. And we're still kind of at the another side of it, but we're still there. Right. So it's been amazing. And so that's why, so I knew I had to write it because God's people have to know the signs of the times and what's really happening, where is it heading, and how to prepare and prevail.
Yes, let's talk about all of that. That's great. That's what we want to talk about. I want to know what you think is going on, where we are right now, and why these shakings are happening to begin with.
Well, for those who know The Harbinger, and quick nutshell.
And that's your book right here. I just want to say.
Yeah, the new one's The Harbinger 2.
Harbinger 1, Harbinger 2.
Yeah,
excellent.
This is the original. I've never held up two books, but this is the original. This is what I wrote. This is the first book I wrote. And the first one, this is saying the absolute biblical template of warning a nation that is heading to calamity. And the warning is that years before the judgment or the great shakings come, there is a strike on the land. And that happens in the Bible again and again. And it's a warning, it's a wake-up call, it's a shaking. And the nation's then given a period of time to come back. Well, with us, that was 9/11. And we had, for those who don't know the Harbinger, all these harbingers that were in the last days of Israel are now appearing in America. But that was the beginning, that wasn't the end. That's why I knew there was going to be something else. Because the template is that once that happens, then the nation has this window. And where is it going to go? Is it going to, the idea, the call of God is to come back to God. Right. That's the whole point. And sometimes he has to shake us. But in the case of ancient Israel, they didn't come back. They made this vow of defiance, and they accelerated in their fall, and it led to calamity. Well, America has been following the same course as ancient.
We're on the same pattern, right?
Yeah, it's not just the signs that are external. It's America itself. That's what the Harbinger is saying. That is following this. And so since 9/11, we've been following this. And there are harbingers that have appeared after the book and after 9/11. And so that's part of what's being revealed. And then where we are now, where that's led us to, there's a sense that things are just falling apart.
Right. We're in times we've never seen
people
across the world.
Are not even believers are sensing that.
Sure. So, people went, is it the end? I hear that a lot.
Yeah.
People wondering where we are, and we're going to talk about all those things. You said, okay, that's the warnings that Israel got, now America is getting.
Yes.
So there's a parallel there.
Yes.
The same things going on. What are some of the things that Israel was doing that we're doing that have brought these harbingers and warnings? And then we'll talk about some of the warnings.
Well, one of the things that's striking, and most people don't know this, America was founded after the pattern of Israel, of ancient Israel. The Puritans were saying, this is dedicated to that, and so we were founded to be like a new Israel in a sense, not
we dedicate our nation to God.
To God.
Whereas God went after Israel, we went after God and said, we're going to found our nation on Levitical law, on the
Yeah.
principles in the Constitution was founded there.
And they said, basically, John Winthrop, who was one of the, the founders of America from the Puritans, he said, he gave this prophetic word, and he said, if we follow the ways of God, then these things shall happen to America. And
Blessings.
He's quoting from Deuteronomy 28, and we'll be blessed. We'll be our enemies will flee. We'll be the most. And so America, it happened. America has become was the most blessed, powerful, prosperous nation in history. But in our prosperity, we began to turn away from God. And so that is where we are. And the thing is, and he said, but, see, people say, that's what he said, we shall be a city on a hill. And that's where we get that from, and so at the same time, they don't say what else he said. He said, but if we turn away from our God, then, and I'm saying in effect, he said the curses or the judgment that came on Israel will come upon us. And that's really, and he certainly wasn't reading the Harbinger, but the Harbinger is saying that exact pattern from Israel is happening now. So what we have done is, what Israel did is, in the height of their prosperity, they started driving God out. They drove him out of their culture, out of their public squares. They drove him out.
Our public schools.
Yeah, and from the instruction of the children.
Right.
And so we have done exactly that. You can see it step by step by step. It's happening. Then, when you turn away from God, you're going to turn to other things. So they turn to other gods, and we have two. We don't admit it.
Baal, right?
Yeah, and so and with us, money and success and a million things. But then it says also that Israel then fell into sexual immorality. Well, we have as well, clearly. It says the Bible says that we'll call evil good and good evil. It's happening. We're doing it.
Absolutely.
And then they offered up their children as sacrifices, on the altars of Baal and Moloch. We have offered up 60 million children on the altars of abortion.
Yes.
And so we've done all these things. And the other thing is that scripture that says, woe to those who call evil good and good evil. Well, there's a principle there. If you call what is evil, sin, good, hey, let's celebrate it. Well, then you're going to go to the next stage where you're calling what is good evil. So at the beginning of this change, everything was like, hey, do your own thing, tolerance. Yeah, it was tolerance to get the evil in through the door. But once it's in the door, now you don't hear much about tolerance. It's the opposite. Now you can't say this, can't say this. We're going to cancel you. We're going to cancel you.
Right.
So we're watching the other side of the coin. And in the last days of Israel, it was the same thing. They were trying to silence the prophets, silence Jeremiah, and then judgment came. So we've done really, in a modern version, we've done everything that Israel did. You take God out, something else is coming in. Something's coming in. So now we actually have things that we could hardly have imagined. We have kindergartners learning about that they're not really boys or girls, transgenderism. You turn on Nickelodeon. You turn on to see children's cartoons are actually indoctrinating children against God. Who could imagine that would have been? Well, we're there.
We're there. And that you can't even speak certain things. Freedom of speech. Freedom of religion. Never in America have we seen such attack against that. And talking about schools, just this past week at a school in our area, they have a new thing called furries. So not only can we be male or female and all these different...
not reality. It's just not reality.
It's not reality.
And part of the apostasy from God is man saying, I make my own reality. I'm God, so I can make my own reality. If I don't want to be male, I don't want to be human. And that's also a pagan thing. Back then, you saw that. What did the pagan world do? They joined man and animal. It was degrading. They worshipped these half things. It ultimately degrades you. And so that is what it's like there was just recently, New York Times of all newspapers, it was an op-ed, but the title was, Is the West Becoming Pagan Again?
Wow.
New York Times.
I saw that.
New York Times.
I saw that.
Yeah, and it is. But it's just like Israel. When you go away from God, they were getting pagan. And we're watching these pagan values.
Yeah, and you're talking about mixing those animals, the one at the United Nations building, that looks like something described out of the book of Revelation.
Yeah, that thing with wings and the whole thing. Yeah.
A leopard that's got teeth like a lion. Just like out of Revelation.
We are reliving this, and God has given us already this template, and you don't do that without consequence. And so what's happening is that what the warning was there, and you think about where we were at 9/11 when that happened. Look at where we are now. It's so much worse. And so therefore, the harbingers or the warnings have continued. Even this whole thing that we're going through, even the shaking, is part of this mystery. To exact years.
Wow. To lose our freedoms, to to lose our ability to speak, to stand up for what we believe. It's an interesting time to live in, but a lot of people feel fearful. Are you fearful, and do you think people should be afraid? What's going to happen next, and where do we go? Because we've unfortunately seen believers and even spiritual leaders go into a closet and lock themselves down, or close down, or stop speaking, or even give way to ideologies and heresies that pagan philosophies are pushing, that, oh, you just need to accept these things. It's just the way it is. And we just need to be accepting. And this is love. Is that really love?
No. If you call evil good, you're going to call love hate and hate love. And, you're going to call life death and death life.
Yes, that's what's happening.
Yeah. And so But I don't see it as fearful, because, if you're not right with God, I'd be afraid. If you are right with God, you don't have to be, because one of the things that the Harbinger 2 is saying, is that God's in control, that these are following exact things. God is still in control. Even when everything is in dark, he's still in control. And it could be our greatest moment, because when you look at the biblical times, you look at Jeremiah, he wasn't in a Christian culture. He was in a quote, anti-Christian culture.
And neither was
Paul,
Jesus,
Paul, they were all in culture. And that's what really allowed, well, Jesus was always great, but allowed the rest to become great, because this can be our greatest hour, that the candle that's burning in the dark is the one that is seen all over. So the grays are disappearing. Back when some of us were kids, it was considered a Christian nation. Everybody was Christian.
Yeah.
Unless you were Jewish, everything was Christian. So it was Judeo-Christian. But when that's the case, kind of everything doesn't mean as much. It's like everything's gray. But now the grays are disappearing. Those who stand for God now, you're really standing. And those are the ones who are going to be great. So it's
heroes. Time for heroes.
Yeah.
I've been watching the culture make heroes into villains and villains into heroes.
Yeah.
God has heroes, and what he calls a hero stands, no matter what the culture does. And in the long run, the Daniels, the Shadrach, the Meshachs, Abednegos, the Esthers, the Deborahs, they step up and they become part of God's history.
Yeah, and many of them who were not great before they stepped up. Esther, if she didn't step up, we wouldn't know her. But she stepped up. So it's kind of like it forces you, for such a time as this, forces you to make a decision. I'm either going with the dark or I'm going with the light. Go with the light, it's going to make you like the great saints of God. So in that sense, it's that's exciting. And remember, we were talking before, but we're not here on earth to survive. If we're here to survive, then we could be scared. Okay, this is going to happen. Right. We're here to minister. We're here to. We're not here to be accepted by the world. We're here to help the world be accepted by God. Help it come into the kingdom. We are here. We're here. If you think about it, this is not our comfort place. This is our mission field. So if that's the case, there's nothing to fear. We're here to do our job. And it's an exciting time. When I was here with you and sharing at Faith Life, I didn't have it in the notes, but I thought, what's the best part of the movie? The last 15 minutes.
Yes.
Well, so we're in the last 15 minutes.
I've used that example too. It's like we're in the movie and it's at the suspenseful time.
Yeah.
But the victory, the glory's coming, right?
Yeah. So one thing is to know the signs of the time, that God is always in control.
Yeah.
And it's not out of control. Man is out of control, but not God.
Well, none of this caught him off guard. He already spoke about it in the back of the book, Revelation.
Yeah.
We already know what's coming.
Yeah.
And we know. So we're not afraid. And the Bible says he doesn't want us to be caught off guard, like those that don't know what's going on.
Right. Well, we were talking about how, I came to the Lord, you came to the Lord by first looking at this book, which is all about end time prophecy, the late great planet Earth. And the thing is that, back then we were saying, okay, we know there's going to be persecution and, that's going to come. And so the fact that it's here, didn't the Bible already say it? Is anything out of control? It already said it's going to happen. We didn't know the details, but it's here.
And we focused on the return of the Lord and not so much the perilous times, treacherous, treacherous times and the perilous, times and days.
We all want the great testimony, but we don't want the conditions that bring the great testimony.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
And so one of the things is that everything is in its place and God is on the throne. The question is, what are we going to do? This is a time to rise up, to be great, to be bold. Don't be afraid. Don't
to be on
shut
guard.
Up. Yeah, be
unguarded.
On guard. And speak, and shine your light. Because if the very fact that the world's saying you stop that right, that's showing you how much the world needs it. Because that's how dark it is. It needs to shine. So we have to be that people.
Yes, and Nebuchadnezzar, we've seen these throughout scriptural stories where it looked impossible.
Yeah.
You know, we're throwing you into a fiery furnace. We're going to put you in a lion's den. You know, you're going to be, if you go before the king, you're going to possibly be taken, your life taken. All these situations look very perilous, and they are perilous in the sense that there's peril involved, there's danger, but we were created for this time.
Yeah.
God knew,
Yeah.
He knew you'd be here, I'd be here.
Yeah.
He knew we'd read the late great planet Earth and we'd say, Lord, we don't want to miss your second
Yeah.
coming. We
Yeah.
don't want to miss your return.
And what an honor it is, you know, an honor to stand for God in these times. You know, to stand for God when everybody's saying, yeah, we're Christian, that doesn't mean much. You're following the crowd. But to stand for God when it may not be popular, that means everything. It's an honor to stand with the king when it counts. You know, it's like if you get a stock, you know, I don't mean to get into economic things, but you buy a stock when it's all popular, you don't get much out of it. You buy it when it's not popular, when it's on the ground floor, that is glory. So when you stand with the Lord before every knee, when you bow your knee now to him, before every knee bows, that's your credit, that's to the glory.
And you know, I'm thinking about human relationships. How precious is it to us when someone falsely accuses us or makes life difficult, that someone stands with us?
Yes, it means more.
It means so much more, because they're fair weather friends, we call them, but then there are friends that stick with us when people come against us. And those are the precious, precious people that stand. So how much more with the Lord?
Yeah, the Lord saying,
those are his
"You stand with
friends.
me." Yeah, and we want to be his friend. And that, so it really means something. So even though, you know, I'm saying, that even, and the thing is that even though there is a cost, you know, that very thing that's a cost is what will form us to greatness. You know, when you look at those great stories of believers who were persecuted for their faith, you know, in communist countries and under Nazis, it's always, those produce the greatest testimonies. And so that's what God will become, who we're supposed to be because of it, you know? So it's not something to fear. You know, if God didn't want us here, we wouldn't be born here. You know, he chose us.
That's good. Yeah. It's actually the pressure that bursts the hero. Yeah. Because the person comes out. If life was just mundane, normal, everything's going the same, people just going through the motions.
You don't have great, you know, look at, you know, Abraham Lincoln. There's a war. If it was just not good times, you may not, Lincoln said Lincoln. But all these things are, that's what create. You don't get that when things aren't. So listen, you know, it's a chance for greatness. You know, great is the opposition, but great is the power, and great is the testimony, and great is the glory. That's the chance we have.
That's great. We were made for such a time as this.
Yeah.
This is it.
And you know, and Esther was made for that time.
Right.
But she had to rise. So she had to make a decision, and the decision was, all right, you know, God's will is first, not my comfort, not if I lose. Said, I'm going to do it. If I perish, I perish. And that's when her life really begins. That's when she becomes Esther.
And I love that Mordecai called her out in a way.
He did.
He said, you know, you will perish, you know, and God will use someone else.
Yeah.
He'll bring deliverance. God will bring the deliverance, but it won't be you and your family that get spared if you aren't willing to stand.
Rise. Yeah, well, that's it too. You know, God will get, the one thing, you know, the enemy cannot stop in the end. He cannot stop the will of God. He can hinder these things, but he cannot stop the will of God in the end. So therefore, you want to be with the will of God. If you don't, God's will will happen one way or the other. But I don't want it to happen one way or the other. I want it to happen. I want the will that he has for my life to happen in my life, you know. And then, you know, so that's what we have to go for. So it's nothing to fear, but it is to rise. We have to rise.
Where do you feel like we are in the end? I'm sure you get that question all the time, so I'm going to ask it because I know that's what everyone wants to know. How much longer? And part of, I think, human nature in asking that is sometimes people go, well, I want to make sure I get in right before the door closes, the ark closes. But in a way, we're all living in our last days in a sense. I mean, we don't know all of our days, you know, and everything.
Nobody does.
Why do we have this human nature that says, I want to know if it's the very last of the last day so I can get right? It's like, no, let's just get right.
You got to get right anyway.
But where are we?